Okay, hey everyone, welcome back. Pastor Patrick Walker. I've been working my way through Ezekiel, and I am in Ezekiel chapter 43, starting in verse 6. While the man was standing beside me, I heard someone speaking to me from inside the temple. He said, "Son of man, this is the place of my throne and the place for the soles of my feet. This is where I will live among the Israelites forever." So you have an angel speaking to Ezekiel in this context. And from, I would say, let's say Ezekiel 40 onward, you see the description of the millennial temple. So the temple that's going to be built when Jesus returns to the earth, sets up his kingdom for 1,000 years. You see the dimensions and the description of that temple presented in the final chapters in the book of Ezekiel. And that comes essentially through an angel being sent to Ezekiel, who walks him through kind of in this vision. I mean, it's not necessarily a dream. I mean, he's like entered a different reality, and he's there. He's walking through. They're measuring the different places of the temple, and he's writing all of this down to be reported to the Jewish nation. Well, in the midst of this, we encounter this passage in Ezekiel chapter 43. So this is very prophetic. It's forward-looking. And as he's standing there with this angel, it says there was a voice from inside the temple. And the voice says, "Son of man, this is the place of my throne." Now, historically, as I've shared in the past, what was considered to be the throne of God was the ark. So it was in the Holy of Holies inside the temple, surrounded like the outer court. Maybe if you think of a throne room, that's the throne of the king. The curtain separates the rest of the throne room. And this is where Moses would go to speak with Jesus face to face. I think that when Moses went into the tabernacle to speak with God face to face, it wasn't God the Father, because no one's ever seen God the Father. The role of the second person of the Trinity, Jesus, was to manifest God to humanity. And it was Jesus that Moses was speaking to. And Jesus was manifesting from the ark, from the top of the ark, from the mercy seat or the atonement cover of the ark, because my theory is, based upon scripture, is that is his throne. So, and the tabernacle was simply an earthly replica, a mirror image of a heavenly reality. So Jesus is sitting in heaven on the ark, on his throne. And it's kind of like in Star Wars, he's projecting himself on earth in the tabernacle, and he's speaking to Moses horizontally, even though he's sitting on his throne in heaven. That's how I kind of picture it. Anyway, there's going to come a time predicted in Scripture where Jesus is going to return in physical form with his resurrected body. And he is going to set up a residence in Jerusalem on a renewed, recreated earth for 1,000 years in a temple that has been rebuilt, the millennial temple. And it says his throne room is going to be the Holy of Holies. Son of man, this is the place of my throne. This is verse 7. This is where I will live among the Israelites forever. I will dwell with them forever. Now, if we went back to Ezekiel chapter 37, there's actually a couple of relevant verses that go along with this. In Ezekiel 37, the last part of the chapters, there's about a dozen promises of what's going to happen with the restoration of Israel and the recreation of the state of Israel under Messiah's authority and leadership during the 1,000-year reign of Christ. One thing is they're going to be one nation. They're not going to be divided like they were for so many years in the Old Testament. There's going to be one king over them. He says in verse 23, they will be my people and I will be their God. Verse 24, my servant David will be king over them. I literally believe King David will be resurrected to rule over the nation of Israel itself, while Jesus, the King of Kings, will rule over all kings of all nations on the earth at that time. So he says there'll be one shepherd. Verse 25, David, my servant, will be their prince forever. I will make a covenant of peace with them. It will be an everlasting covenant. I will establish them and increase their numbers. I will put my sanctuary among them forever. My dwelling place will be with them. I will be their God and they will be my people. And then the nations will know that I, the Lord, make Israel holy when my sanctuary is among them forever. So this is another passage, parallel passage where Jesus is essentially saying, my residency will be with the Jewish people in Jerusalem, in the temple, in the sanctuary, the Holy of Holies, where his throne will, he will sit on his throne, the Ark of the Covenant, and from there he will rule over all the nations of the earth. I think this will be in fulfillment of prophecy for the Jewish nation, but will be a blessing for all Christians, all those who have served Jesus in faith and have been resurrected and restored to a renewed earth and will live with Jesus dwelling on the earth. They will live with him face to face, so to speak, for 1,000 years. So this is an amazing promise in Ezekiel chapter 37. And then all throughout the last chapters of Ezekiel, we are reading page after page of the predictions of what an enlarged and perfected nation of Israel is going to look like during the 1,000-year reign of Christ, that like the territorial boundaries, as well as the measurements of the millennial temple. And a lot of this language is very similar to what we see John reporting on in the latter chapters of the book of Revelation. And I might get into that on a later video. But for the time being, the amazing promise of which we can dwell on today is that Jesus will return, and when he returns, he will set up a kingdom, and he will restore and renew the earth. And his kingdom, his capital will be Jerusalem. He will reign from the Holy of Holies in the capital of the world at that time, Jerusalem, which is called the Mountain of God. It says his feet will physically be upon the earth, and he will dwell among his people forever. That's an amazing promise to look forward to, where he tabernacles with mankind forever and ever. And his sanctuary is, and his presence is among us. So Ezekiel 37 and Ezekiel 43, amazing promises of God, the return of Christ, and him setting up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, where he dwells with man on the earth. Okay, until next time, God bless.